this meeting of the Lee County Board of Commissioners to order, and welcome everybody. We've got a full house tonight, and again, if we have any citizens come in, if staff can step out for just a few minutes, if they're here for the public hearings, just so they can be in the room, I'd appreciate it. I know they would as well. At this time, I'd like to call on Commissioner Doc Odom to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
Pray with me, please. Lord Jesus, thank you for this, another day that you've given us. Lord, you know who we are, the wrong we have done, the things we could have done that we did not do. Lord, in your mercy, forgive us, the sinners we are. Open our hearts, Lord, to follow your word. Lord, be with those in need. Be with those with heavy hearts. Now, Lord, we ask you to guide and direct us through these proceedings. We pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Odom. At this time, are there any additional items to the agenda? Okay, is there a motion?
We accept the agenda as listed.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move item A of new business up to item D of the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. All right, so move item A of new business and make that D of the consent agenda. Any questions or discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. All right. We'll move into our public hearings. And at this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Amy McNeil on the first hearing for the rezoning, zoning amendment request for 5 tracts of land on Harvey Falk Road. Good evening.
Good evening, Lee County Commissioners, Lee County Planning Board, and staff. Planning staff has received a rezoning application from a representative of Schoolhouse Sanford LLC, who's interested in creating a new campus for a charter school on 5 tracts of land comprising approximately 23 acres off of Harvey Falk Road, and the subject property is illustrated on the screen. The plan is to develop the campus in phases that would initially be served by public water and a private septic system, with the possibility of extending sanitary sewer to the site in the future when and if the need arises due to further development of the site. A site plan for this project has been reviewed by the Sanford Lee County Technical Review Committee. The rezoning application requests that the property be rezoned from residential restricted and residential agricultural conditional use to general commercial C2. North of the site is a vacant tract of land between the subject property and JT Auto Mart that is zoned highway commercial. South of the site are residential single-family homes zoned residential restricted and a large vacant tract of land zoned highway commercial. East of the site, opposite NC Highway 87, is a lumber yard zoned highway commercial conditional use and farmland zoned residential restricted. West of the site are residential single-family homes on adjoining lots that are zoned residential restricted and a large commercial building on the opposite side of Harvey Falk Road zoned light industrial. The subject property appears to have access to public water via a 12-inch main public water line that parallels Harvey Falk Road. The subject property does not have access to public sanitary sewer and once again is proposed to be served by a private septic system. If the rezoning is approved, all new development that proposes to connect to public water must be approved by the City of Sanford Public Works Department to verify compliance with all applicable regulations, and all new development that proposes to utilize a private septic system must be approved by the Lee County Environmental Health Department to verify compliance with all applicable regulations. The subject property has approximately 230 feet of frontage on Harvey Falk Road, which is an NCDOT maintained public street with a 60-foot right-of-way. New development that proposes to connect to Harvey Falk Road must be approved by NCDOT to verify compliance with their standards. Per GIS, there are no environmental features illustrated on the site, and the site is not located within an established floodplain or watershed. It's also not located within a small planned study area or a designated historic district. 4 of the 5 tracts of land requested to be rezoned are residential restricted, and this is established to provide areas for low-density, single-family uses with a maximum of 1.5 dwelling units per acre. A list of all the uses permitted in the residential restricted zoning district is included in your agenda for reference. 1 of the 5 tracts of land requested to be rezoned, and it happens to be the larger one, is zoned residential agricultural conditional use. Residential agricultural is established to provide areas for low-density single-family uses, low-intensity agricultural operations, as well as agribusiness and supportive industrial and commercial uses. Industrial operations are not permitted unless they clearly support agricultural uses. RACU is identical to the RA district, except a conditional use was required as a prerequisite for certain uses. And on this particular site, in 1992, a conditional use was approved to locate a new single-family mobile home on the property that was to replace an existing older single-family mobile home. And a list of the permitted uses in the RA zoning district are included in the agenda for your reference. The proposed zoning of general commercial C2 is established to provide areas for general commercial activities designed to serve the communities such as shopping centers, repair shops, wholesale businesses, and retail sales with limited outdoor display of goods and limited outdoor operations. A list of the permitted uses allowed in the C2 district is also included in your agenda for reference. Please be mindful that if the property is rezoned to general commercial C2, all of the uses permitted within the zoning district would be allowed, subject to the UDO design standards. So even though the applicant plans to develop a charter school at this location, he or she is not legally bound to do so. The 2020 land use plan map identifies this area as retail commercial with a highway overlay, which identifies areas appropriate for retail and commercial uses. The overlay identifies an area with a high level of design and development standards along major transportation corridors or major highways, and you can see this parallels Highway 87 South, even though the access is actually off of Harvey Falk Road. A public information meeting was held regarding this rezoning request on April 12th, with the major concern being that all of the land uses other than the school that would be permitted within the general commercial C2 zoning district if the property were rezoned. Traffic fencing and the fact that, given the configuration of the subject property, a large portion of the subject property is to the rear of the existing houses, was also discussed. Are there any questions?
So you said that the, this is still subject to DOT approving the entrance, because right now that, what I've seen on the drawings was proposed is 2 lanes and 1 exit, 2 entrance lanes and 1 exit, if it's all rezoned.
Yes, sir. Now, please be mindful that it has already been reviewed by the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, which DOT is a part of, and they said given the traffic counts and the information that they had, a traffic impact analysis or TIA would not be required, and that the design appeared to be sufficient, that the applicant would simply need to apply for a driveway permit and any and all encroachment agreements.
It looks like it fronts Harvey Falk Road and NC 87, is that right? Part of it.
The land does, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
The driveway permit, will it be, do they know which way they're going to ask for it, off of Harvey Falk? or-
Harvey Falk Road, yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
87 is controlled access, so that's not an option.
How close is sewer?
Sewer is actually on the other side, the northeast side of Harvey Falk Road. And it's my understanding that the developer and/or designer have actually looked into the extension, but it would take quite a bit of time. So I can't tell you exactly how many hundreds of feet, but it's in the area.
questions?
So has any soil work been done at this point, or?
Yes, sir. The developer has secured the services of a soil scientist who has studied the site and determined that there's adequate room and soil on the site to serve what at least the first phase proposal is for this site. And that soil scientist has provided the information to Lee County Environmental Health for a cursory review. They haven't officially applied for a septic evaluation for the system to be designed, but they have hired the soil scientist and forwarded a study to Environmental Health.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for the application for Schoolhouse Sanford LLC. Would anyone like to speak in favor of? And before you, no, that's okay, come on. Before you start, I had a lot of people sign up on the public comments, but then took their name off. So if you signed up, just let me know, so I'm not missing somebody that wanted to do public comments after the hearings. Okay, if you give your name and address, please.
Absolutely. My name is Justin Smith. I am the Managing Director of Ascend Leadership Academy, charter school coming to Lee County in the fall of 2018. My address is 400 Panorama Park Place, Cary, North Carolina, 27518. But I will say that I am a proud Sanford native and a product of Lee County Schools. And this project for this charter school coming to Lee County is one that I've been a part of from the beginning. And I'm excited about the opportunity to come back and serve the families of Lee County. I'm here tonight representing the Board of Directors who are excited for this opportunity. Over the past year, the Board of Directors and myself have been committed to informing the citizens of the area about our charter school and our unique academic program. We identified the property on Harvey Falk Road as our site of our facility due to its location in southeastern Lee County and the lack of another school in the general area. We then solicited the help of a development company to fulfill the vision that we had for our facility. I can definitively say we're on our way to being open in August and operable in August as well. There's been substantial investments made already towards the startup costs associated with the school and the site planning for the facility. We have begun hiring faculty and staff, and more importantly than that, we've obtained commitments from families in the area, receiving right at 190 student applications for our projected 160 available spots for the 6th and 7th grade in year one. All of which has been done, as you know, without being able to inform our citizens or our families about the specific location of our facility. I really feel that our board is viable and they have experience. I actually come from another charter school in another area of the state, and I'm coming back to Sanford because that was kind of one of my dreams, was to come back and give back to the community that gave so much to me. So by getting that experience in another part of the state, coming back and adding some board members who have similar experience starting and opening and operating a charter school in another part of the state, we feel that we have the experience and the track record to be successful in this endeavor also. So the final step of the process is securing the zoning status of our property, or our identified property site, and beginning construction on our facility. The site planning and initial work has been done with due diligence, and the recommendation of this board and the approval of the rezoning on Harvey Falk Road will continue us towards our successful opening in August of this year. And then we'll be able to stay on the timeline that we have set for construction and to be open by August. We have some parents here in support of us today. I'm not going to ask them to stand, but we have several of them here. We asked them to come out so you can see our support within the community. And quite a few of them have shown up. And then just finally, at the end here, on behalf of Ascend Leadership Academy's Board of Directors, I just want to implore you to fully consider this rezoning proposal, as our goal is to get started in working with the families of Lee County so we can continue the great work that's already going on here, and then we can continue to serve the wonderful families of Lee County. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else to speak in favor? How are you?
Thanks, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak to you this evening. My name is Richard Moss. I am with Schoolhouse Development. Schoolhouse Development, if I may give you a little background on what we do. We have been working with charter schools now for the better part of 14 to 15 years. And we assist charter schools or those people that would like to start a charter school in all aspects of it, from charter construction, charter writing, to submission and approval through the state authorities. We also work with many schools on facilities, design, financing, and most importantly, the ongoing support of a school. We've now been involved with quite a few schools, and those range in size from 85 students all the way up to 2,400 students. So we've been involved in all aspects, and like I said, we have been doing this now about 14 and a half years, and we still have a relationship, an ongoing relationship with every one of the schools that we have been working with, because we are their partner ongoing and support in any way we can. And we're really excited and really honored to be working with Ascend Leadership Academy on this project. There are many things that go into starting a charter school, and a couple of those items that Ascend has done an excellent job is their structure. They have a governing board and put in place a governing board that is very diverse with its members, not only in their background, but their professions, which brings a lot of stability to the school. And another important aspect is the day-to-day leadership. And you just met Mr. Smith, who's going to be an outstanding leader for the school. And another thing that we are really pleased about the school is their curriculum and their leadership and mentoring program, which is going to be a great asset to the students that come to the school. And they're going to be doing this in a moral and wholesome environment. And this just gives parents an opportunity to be able to give their a choice, if you will, for parents to be able to put their child in the school if it's the best fit for them. It doesn't fit all students, but it gives parents that opportunity to choose. And as the area that was shown, there's 2 phases that we are proposing. The first phase would have a modular classroom that is being used as a school facility right now in classrooms. And if approved, we would transport that facility here, and we would remodel it to give it a CMU wainscot and a certainteed batten board finish on it to kind of complement the area and be an asset to the community. And we are placing that and situating that on the site in a way that allows ample on-site stacking for parents that are bringing their kids to the school, and a green belt and buffer for the neighbors that are around it. We are also going to be installing a privacy fence that'll be not on the property line, but offset on the property line on our side, with landscaping on both sides of that. The landscaping will be maintained by the school. And in phase 2, where the modular currently sits, we would remove that and place some more landscaping and additional parking there. And in the back of the site, we would have a 2-story building that would then house the students, and that will have a multi-purpose room, classrooms, many ancillary offices, and administrative offices. And both sides of the property will be protected by the privacy fences, as said, so that it's not only attractive to look at, but it's safe and secure for the students. And then we, again, on both sides of the east and west, so that there'd be privacy from the and security from the highway as well. And I think I'm about covered, but thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moss. Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor?
If I may.
Sure. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Wood Stoster. I'm an attorney here in Sanford. As requested, my address is 1709 Tomerlin Road, Sanford, NC. I wanted to let this public hearing know that I am proud to represent Schoolhouse Sanford LLC in connection with the purchase of this property. They have an ambitious undertaking ahead of them, but the end result will be a new school for Lee County, and wow, isn't that a great thing? I want this public hearing to know as well that they have met all of their financial commitments as regards this purchase. They have made all of the deposits that were required of them. They are on track for completing this purchase. A lot of the decisions that they have made in connection with how they're going about this rezoning are done with an eye towards getting this school open in August. That is a difficult undertaking if you got 5 years ahead of you. It's particularly difficult if you got just 5 months ahead of you, but they're working on it. They are doing a great job, and they are moving forward to represent their students effectively. And if there's anything that I can answer for this board, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Woods.
Hello,
Good evening.
my name is Steve Malloy. I'm with Adcock and Associates. My address is 2615 Bel Air Drive here in Sanford. I represent I'm the listing agent on the property. I represent the owners, and of course, they're in favor. I did want to, when we go to those neighborhood meetings, at least when I'm involved, we take the things that come up and the comments that come up very seriously, and I wanted to address some of those tonight. First, the sewer line is a quarter mile away up the street, Robert E. Lee Road there.
I just found it.
The building will be placed, the building that's going to be put up, you see the green dot there? It's roughly about where that will be, and there will be quite a few trees between it and Highway 87, so A, the building won't be very visible, and you won't have kids wandering out into Highway 87 either. So it'll be a safe location for them. And it is going to be a modular unit, but the developers have been working very closely with planning and so on, and changed some of the materials and everything to make it look like it's not one. One of the things brought up at the neighborhood meeting was what would an item like this or a use like this do to property values. And so I did some research, and believe it or not, I found some research done on proximity of schools to property, what effect they have on property values, and even one of them had to do with charter schools. It was a study done in Toledo, Ohio, conducted by Ball State University, and it was specifically about charter schools and the property values in the neighborhood around them. And what they found is they found little evidence to support that the charter schools had any effect, positive or negative, on property values. There were a few other studies that talked about public schools. One of them did find that proximity to a school could have a negative effect of about 1.5% on the price. Two other studies found that there wasn't really an effect either way. It was more of a preference. You know, some people happy to live near a school, some not. Some happy to live near shopping, some not. Some don't want to live near a cemetery. Personally, I think they make the best neighbors. So it's all up to personal preferences. Though NAR, the National Association of Realtors, did find in a study 2 years ago that 22% of buyers were willing to put a premium on living near a school where their child will attend. So if somebody has a child there and decided they'd have wanted to live close by, they will be willing to pay a little extra for that. So that's property values, so basically no effect. The next other thing that came up is what happens if the school leaves, given that it's general C2 zoning. In C2 zoning, of course, there's schools and churches, and those would be likely uses of the property if this school were to leave and go somewhere else. Many C2 uses just don't fit the property. It's not a retail property. Just access, you can't get onto 87. It's not a lot of it's not visible, so a lot of this retail uses in C2 would never go there. More likely, as I've been marketing this for the past 3 years, the calls that I've gotten about the property have been a few for light industrial uses. One person wanted to put in rows of small metal buildings, divide them up and rent them out. I did present it to people wanting to build a factory here, and it would have fit nicely, although they went to Georgia, unfortunately. So a few calls been about light industrial, but 90% of the calls I've gotten about this property have been for apartments. So if something happened with the school, the next time we were here talking about it, would be likely to get approval for apartments, because that's what people have been interested, that's what the demand has been. And then talking about, because it isn't conditional zoning, that they could put the design up and all that and then build something different, and that is true. But in all the years that I've done this, I've only been one time where somebody put up something different than what they said, and that was apparently a mistake on the part of the contractor. So basically, at least in my experience, people build what they say they're going to build. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Dana Miller, and my address is 116 Copper Ridge Drive. And I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I'm a speech language pathologist, but not a public speaker.
You're fine. Just pretend like we're your students and you're just telling us how to do a speech.
Well, I don't like to talk in front of people, but I did feel like it was important for me to share with you all as a soon-to-be parent of an Ascend Leadership Academy student. I'm the mother of 4. And my oldest is going into 6th grade. And so we're just very excited about this opportunity to try something new and something different that has subjects that are interesting to my daughter and that I think that she will excel in. And so I just wanted you all to know that I'm a committed parent, hopefully for as long as it takes for my 2-year-old to get there and move through, and that I feel like the board and everybody that I have met through our community meetings and things have just been very excited and energetic about this task, I guess, opening a new school. And I'm just thankful that they picked Sanford to come back and start something new. So I hope that everything will work out and we'll be ready to go in August.
Good, thank you. You did great. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board of Commissioners. My name is Damian Perez. My address is 147 Lamplighter Drive, and that's in Spring Lake, North Carolina. I come forward as a parent. I am retired military veteran, and after 20 years, decided to stay in the area. So I have been living in and around the 87 corridor since 2005. I've got 5 kids that have been in and out of different school systems, and right now I part-time work, volunteer, and I'm a parent of my daughter who's in the 5th grade at Anderson Creek Academy. We've had about 3 years experience there in the charter schools, and we love it. And I will tell you, working with the 5th graders, as I've been doing this year, there's been a lot of talk and excitement about continuing their charter school journey. So when Ascend came, obviously the students were excited about it, the families were excited about it, and even the last couple of times I've taught where now the paperwork has begun for middle schools, I've kind of done a little impromptu with the students, asking how many will be attending, just out of my own personal curiosity. And I would say an overwhelming majority of them were planning to attend Ascend. So I wanted to just convey the positive attitudes that the parents and the students have, and I hope that you vote in favor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for your service. Hey there. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Miller. I live at 1600 Overlook Court. I sort of feel like an underachiever. I only have 2 children, and they're busy. And one will be graduating from Lee County High School next year. He is a junior this year. We've I'm just finishing 12 years at J. Glenn Edwards with my 17-year-old and my rising sixth grader. So we are proudly Lee County School students. And we decided to give this a shot because I have been at the same school for 12 years and just wanted to try something different. I think that the project-based learning is really, really exciting. When I have two AIG identified children who love to learn in different ways, have had their ups and downs, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity for us to try something different. And they're excited. My son said it's not fair, so I said he gets college. He can project-based learn there. But we're excited. We think it's interesting, and we like very confident in the leadership that we have seen so far from the school. And we look forward to maybe being open in August. That would be great. Thank you.
Kelly. Anyone else to speak in favor? Okay, is there anyone to speak against? Good evening.
Good afternoon. How are y'all?
Doing well. Thank you.
My name's Tommy Martin. I live at 323 Harvey Fault Road. I'm actually one of the property owners that's adjacent to the property or butted up against the property. I'm actually representing seven of us. I got Miss Holder here. She lives beside me, but I'm actually representing all seven of us that actually have houses there that live there, right? That the property actually butts up to it, right? So we're not necessarily saying that we're not in favor of the school. We're just worried about what could happen, right? So if being that it's being that it's C2 zoning, not conditional, then what happens if it doesn't work out, right? For instance, right across the street, there's a lumber yard that just went in. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, there was another company coming in. It didn't work out. They packed up and moved within a couple months, right? So we know what could happen. So that's one thing that we're worried about. We're worried about if it doesn't make it, some of the things that could go on to it, right? An ABC store, convenience stores, how many drunks we see at night at the ABC store, right? And having two kids, I got a 6-year-old who's going into the first grade, and then I've got a 4-year-old who will be starting school in a couple of years. Some of the other things that we're worried about, again, I said the ABC stores, the convenience stores. How about an amphitheater, outdoor stuff, right? So having little kids, trying to get kids in bed at a decent hour. I know we have a noise ordinance, but it still can go up to late at night where the kids are supposed to be in bed, right? Entertainment establishments, nightclubs, pool halls, right? How much drama do we ever see at those? How much have we heard about those, right? You can turn on the news any given night, and you can see some event coming from those. Another thing that has got some of us worried is, again, not being conditional is, what about the septic stuff? Is it going to be a waste pond? I know they said it was not, but there's nothing that holds us to it from being a waste pond or a lagoon, right? I don't know if many of you know what I'm talking about, but I've been around them. I've worked beside them, and they do smell, right? So that being in my backyard would not be, the check mark to me, right? Another thing would be the students, right? So go along with traffic. When we were at our meeting the other night, it started off at like 160, 200. Then they said by the year 2022, 2023, it'd be roughly 600 kids. So now you've got cars coming out. I know some of them will probably have like a brother and a sister or whatever that be going also that'd be riding in the same car. But there's also, there potentially could be 600 individual cars. So you're adding up traffic on, if you look at it, the road is somewhat of a cul-de-sac, because when the bypass was put in, they blocked off the road where you can take a left going back towards town. So with that being said, you're sort of funneling all the traffic out of one end, which again is right beside my house. And I take my kids to school, so I look at when Tramway when they take into school and take out, the stoplight at Tramway's backed up all the way through, right? Grace Christian School, everybody's backed up past Chat-Lee, right? I mean, I know they got the circle. They've got 2 lanes, as far as dropping kids off and picking kids up, but the traffic's still backed all the way up past Chat-Lee. And Lee Christian's the same way, right? So looking at the amount of kids and knowing the area, because I've been here my whole life, I'm not saying it is or it's not, but I think with that amount of traffic, I think there's going to be an issue on the road. Other than that, again, the district not being a conditional zoning district, that's what worries us the most. And again, I'm speaking on everybody who has a house that actually adjoins that property. So that's all I've got to say. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else to speak against? Okay, we'll close this public hearing. Thank you very much. And our next public hearing is for a UDO text amendment update to Article 6, subdivision regulations. Ms. McNeil.
Good evening once again. All right. Upon conferring with the Lee County Environmental Health Department, staff has determined that specific language should be added to the UDO subdivision regulations to clarify that all proposed lots would require a private septic system in order to be developed must be approved by either a licensed soil scientist or the Lee County Environmental Health Department prior to the plat being recorded. A version of this language was included within the Lee County subdivision ordinance that was in place prior to the UDO, but it was not carried over. The rationale for this requirement is that it prevents someone from creating undevelopable lots. Does anyone have any question about this clarification to the UDO?
Do you know why it was never carried over in the beginning?
I don't. Tony Williams, who's the Lee County Environmental Health Supervisor, and myself, once, everyone says, show me in writing, show me in writing. And so we started looking for it in writing. And we actually found where our ordinance references their ordinance, which references ours. And we found it all the way back to referencing the Lee County subdivision regs. But why the specific language wasn't put in the UDO, we don't know. But this would prevent someone from creating a lot and selling it to you or me, and then us buying it and not being able to put a house on it because it doesn't work. So I think it was merely an oversight, but we definitely need to get that language in the ordinance.
Hadn't the planning board been functioning that way anyway? I mean, or the,
Yes, yes,
I mean, because I know I
we have.
recently had a lot surveyed and I had to have
Yes.
perk tests and all before they would record the
And
plat.
that's because we know that that's the intent. And like I said, this ordinance referenced that ordinance, which referenced this one, and we had to pull the ordinances all the way back and figure out that the language was actually in the Lee County subdivision regulations, but wasn't carried over to the UDO.
And this will fix it.
Yes, sir, this will fix it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for the UDO text amendment. Anyone like to speak in favor of? Anyone like to speak against? Okay, we'll close that public hearing. Thank you. All right, and then I think Mr. Downey for item C, public hearing for a unified development ordinance text amendment to Article 4, permitted use. I think it's supposed to be matrix on our
Yes.
abstract.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board and members of our planning board. As the chair mentioned, this is also another amendment to our Unified Development Ordinance. Essentially, what we're asking the board to consider is a change to our UDO that would remove boarding houses and room renting as an option in our UDO. For a little back history on that, you can see in the memo that you have, there's a definition there. Essentially, what we're trying to do is eliminate situations we've had. Mostly, this really affects the cities and the towns more so than it does the county, to my knowledge. We don't really have any boarding room situations in the county. What we have had is much larger, older homes in some sections of town, particularly in the city of Sanford, have been essentially chopped up, for lack of a better description, into multiple units. While they're certainly serving a need, and we recognize that, it's creating more problems than it's solving in a lot of situations wherein we're all in favor. As you know, we're working on our land use plan and are kind of updating the densities, and we're pushing higher densities in the city. And we're certainly in favor of multifamily and projects like that. But the city essentially is not in favor of this style of housing. We've had nothing but nuisance problems, to be quite honest with you. With this, we had a situation on Tristan Street, many of you may be familiar with,
where there was a building that was torn down recently by the city as a result of this kind of thing. So what's being asked is that we simply eliminate this as an option or as a tool in our ordinance, and that we capture that in other ways. Again, I would tell you, I do reinforce to you, don't take this as a reflection that we're not in favor of higher density, because we do want to see infill, we want to see quality development and design. We just think that this may be a kind of a bad option or an indirect bad situation that could be created because of that. So we're trying to clean the UDO up in advance of adoption of our land use plan, for lack of a better description. And I'll pause there, Madam Chair, for some additional questions.
Any questions?
I understand you said the city supports this idea.
Yes, sir.
Hasn't been before them yet, has it?
No, it has not. I failed to mention, anytime we're doing a text amendment, just as a reminder, we do take this to the Joint Planning Commission,
Right.
which means that you have your two members, your Madam Chair, as well as Mr. Sloan, who serve on that, as your Planning Board Chair, and Ms. Coles, and as well as similar equivalents on the City of Sanford and Town of Broadway. So we kind of vet it through that process before we take it to the full public hearing.
Okay.
So if somebody in the county is renting out their home that has more than 3 bedrooms, they're no longer be permitted?
No, this would be if somebody took their single-family home and wanted to divide that up and rent it out in individual rooms at a time. So if you wanted to rent your home out and it had 3 bedrooms, and if you're still keeping that as a single unit, essentially you're renting the whole house out to a single family, you can do that. What we would say is what's happening is you're taking an older single-family home, again, mostly in the city, as our experience has been, that may have been a 5 or 6 bedroom home, and then they're individually taking each unit and renting that out. So you've got basically 6 different folks using a communal bath and a communal kitchen kind of thing.
Basically renting rooms
Yes.
as individual dwellings.
You drive by some of those houses, there'll be 10 your cars parked in the yard. There's not enough driveway for them.
Basically like the home at Maple and Third.
Yes.
It was shut in the city
That one voluntarily closed down, yes.
voluntarily.
It did. Same owner on the one on Chisholm, and I think it was a fear that,
Well, and I think when we had our Joint Planning Commission meeting, if my memory serves me correctly, it seems like it's been 2 years ago. But, we had discussions, the HomeAway and VRBO and that kind of thing is gaining popularity with people, but this wouldn't impact those types of things, because you're not physically chopping up rooms and charging people weekly or monthly
right.
rent.
So, right, and what Madam Chair is referring to, there were actually 2 things that were brought up that night, if memory serves me. One was bread and breakfast, how this would affect that.
Mm-hmm.
A bed and breakfast, you have to live on the property. So you could still do something like this, but you have to live there and provide the meals and things like that. So you couldn't just rent it out. The second thing was the Airbnb concept, which is kind of gaining popularity across the country. And goes back to what you were talking about, like when you want to rent your whole house out. So again, as long as you're kind of renting the whole use out, we don't really get into that. Now, we'll tell you, and we did talk about that night, the challenge for local folks is how do you enforce Airbnb, because a lot of times, they're not going to go through any kind of local approval for that. They're just going to list it on one of those national sites or regional sites, and then they're going to rent directly with the renter. Other communities are dealing with that. Raleigh's dealing with that right now, but nobody has really gotten a good handle on how to deal with that. So that's kind of we may be back to you in the future with something on how to deal with that.
Does that help, Andre? Is that where you would go?
Just want to make sure, somebody's just legitimate, you don't take their profit.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Any more questions?
So what happens if, because I know there are circumstances where that is occurring, if this is approved, is there, do they have to adhere to that in a certain amount of time, or is it grandfathered?
You're talking about a boarding house?
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that would be existing, as long as they didn't cease the operation for more than 180 days, 6 months, they would be grandfathered. Now, what they wouldn't be able to do is expand it. So if they had 3, they couldn't go to 4, et cetera.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll open the public hearing for the UDO text amendment on boarding houses and room renting. Anyone that would like to speak in favor of the amendment? Or opposed? Okay, we'll close that public hearing. All right, the final public hearing, Mr. Downey, for UDO text amendment updating Article 11 for sign regulations, and this was a monster.
This was a monster, and maybe I shouldn't say anything else. No.
No, I mean, it's just, it's a lot.
So it was very comprehensive, is the way I would put it,
Yes.
maybe in a more positive spin.
That's good.
So, as the Madam Chair is referring to, if you look at the memo that's a part of that I included in your packet, what this came out of is we did a wholesale, what we're asking you to do is consider a wholesale update to our sign regulations. But that is based on, that is not a public-driven per se, like an applicant, nor is that even a planning staff-driven. And let me clarify when I make that statement. This is a staff-driven change that we're asking you to consider, but this is a direct result of a landmark Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court case in 2015. It's the town of Gilbert, Arizona versus Reed, and what this did. And I don't want to get into too much particulars there. This is more Whitney's arena. But it gets into freedom of speech and freedom and it directly as it relates to sign regulations. And what it basically said is that all content-based sign regs are no longer valid. So what that did is almost every sign ordinance across the country went poof in an instance, because just about every sign ordinance in the country has some type of content-based regulation. And when I say that, what context do I mean with that? So when you think about all of the signs that you see along our community, we have the freestanding signs that are associated with businesses, churches, etc. You have your wall signs that are on your businesses. And then a lot of times you might see the smaller, more temporary type signs and banners that you see along in our community. What we've been able to decipher, so let me, before I jump into that, essentially staff looked to our legal staff for assistance on this, and the legal staff of the city of Sanford kind of took the lead on this, and they went to a third-party attorney, Parker Poe out of Raleigh. And we spent the last year or so working with them to basically look at our regulations, go through it, and give us changes based on what they feel like is now legal, that you can, how you can address this without putting yourself in jeopardy with the new law. Whitney was a part of that, I think, in terms of at the end here and kind of looking at that and making sure we're okay with that. But what I was going back to, so one of the things we struggle with is how do you define that? How do you deal with that? So you can deal with the bulk, the location, the size of a sign. You can deal with some of those things, but you just can't deal with what the content is. And that's okay, and that works fine for our commercial permanent signs, like our pole signs, our monument signs, our wall signs, and things like that. So when you look through this, and what you're going to see in this, there's not really any changes to that. Where this hit our local community hard is the smaller signs, the intermittent signs, and I'll use directly, like political signs, for example. They were part of this, because how do you regulate a political sign unless you know it's content-based, right? You're looking at what the message is being. Real estate signs, church signs, any of those off-premise signs that you may be placed around a community, that's really what has changed in this ordinance. Essentially, they had to take all that out and say you can no longer really define those signs based on what the content is, and you have to treat them all basically the same way. And so that's what we've done here, is really kind of narrowed that scope down and limited that to say that you essentially, we treat them all with kind of like one size and locations and standards and things like that. With the one exception, and I did point out political signs. What you will see in here, political signs are still kind of in the format that we had before, and that's mainly because the state of North Carolina also has specific rules and regulations that say how you're supposed to treat political signs as a local government. So what essentially we have a federal law and a state law that are in direct conflict with each other. So I think we left it to the point, we left it such that we were going by the state law as it relates to that, because we feel like if we don't, it's kind of like we don't really know exactly which one we're going to get in the most trouble with. And I'll pause there, Madam Chair. And again, as Madam Chair indicated, there's lots and lots of changes in here. A lot of it, I mean, we can get into the weeds of that, but I didn't want to do that with you tonight. But we certainly, if you have specific questions, I'll be glad to try to jump in there.
Any questions?
Give me a can-do and a cannot-do sign that anybody will identify with.
Okay. Let's see here. So before, you would have been able to do like an off-premise real estate sign, perhaps, or an off-premise, construction sign that was a different size. So, for example, the real estate sign might be smaller, the construction sign would be larger. What you would do now is you'd be able to have those potentially, but they're all going to be the same size. And there's one kind of standard that they're all going to be stuck with.
That is a change.
So one of those cell phone companies puts out a sign, temporary sign.
Again, it doesn't matter if it's a cell phone company. It's all going to be one sign. So I don't care what it says. I'm just going to be looking to say, does that sign meet this dimension or this standard and location?
What's the size?
I'd have to look. So temporary sign, 30, assuming this were like a temporary sign, 32 square feet, except for along a controlled access highway where you can get up to 64. Let's see, you can have it up to 30 days. And this would be for commercial properties, essentially, all commercial properties. Now, there is a different standard for single family, like a residential sign. And that, I'll be honest with you, that's kind of pushing a little bit, but we felt like there was enough of a difference there. We could at least try to 32 square feet for commercial.
What page are you on there?
I am on 11-14. And keep in mind, these are on-premise signs. We no longer allow off-premise at all. And that's the biggest change. In other words, you can't, all your signs now have to be on the property that you have ownership of or control of. Whereas before, we used to allow certain signs to be off-premise.
We got a complicated life.
Yes.
How about those church signs they have, the chicken dinners or whatever they put out on the highway? Can those be allowed or not allowed because they're not on the premises?
Right. So, no, they would no longer be allowed, I do not believe, because again, we have taken out. So the only, if you go if you go to page 11-5 of your packet, you'll see there are a few signs that don't require a permit, but that would not be one of those. And then anything else would have to fall under either a permanent sign or the temporary signs that we were just describing.
So those things will not be allowed to be advertised anymore?
That's correct.
Yard sale signs?
Yard sale signs, any of those signs, right?
But to go back though, we're not really being proactive here. We're being reactive to a Supreme Court decision.
Yeah. So, and the way it was explained to me when I was talking with the city attorney and with the Parker Poe attorney, you have a choice in your community. You either do it this way, where you don't allow any of them, or you more or less have to go the 180 degrees and you allow everything. Essentially, you can't. If you're going to allow an off-premise sign, you can establish a size, and you can establish location. May be even challenged, but you can do some bold things. But you can't. You can no longer say it's only for a church or it's only for this type of use. It has to be. If you allow one, you allow them all. And we took the more conservative approach of the way we drafted this here and said that we wouldn't. You would allow them on the property, but no longer allow them off the property. I will tell you, every community in this country is dealing with this and struggling with it because it is huge.
So like you just said, you're putting up a sign for a lost dog. You can't do that anymore.
That is correct, yeah.
No.
I know, that was a bad choice right now. But thank goodness we have social media now, so we do have, so I know.
How many have gone to allowing any sign? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, no. I know that the company that did it for us, this was about the 6th or 7th, if I remember right, jurisdiction that they had done this for.
I have to admit, this seems like such a big waste of time and energy to start trying to regulate something as simple as a sign. I mean, I understand the Supreme Court and I understand the law, and certainly we intend to abide by it, but it just seems so unreasonable, as opposed to making a person who places a sign, be it a church or an individual that has identified themselves, making them responsible for removal or anything else. We're going to have that problem. It's a little bit worse than that. No offense to you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. I understand.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Downey? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open the public hearing for the UDO text amendment updating the sign regulations. Anyone to speak in favor? I hate to ask this next question. Anyone would like to speak against?
Can I just ask a question? Have you got enough staff to go around and pick up all the VBS signs this summer?
Oh.
We'll let Marshall answer that.
Yeah, the short answer is no. It goes back to the comment that Mr. Reeves made a minute ago. Yeah, it is going to be
Personal responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, we have challenging now with the signage regulations we have. I mean, it's just hard to regulate that. And we know that people are going to put signs up and they're still going to do this. And we know that a lot of these things are going to be illegal, and that's just the way it is. We do the best we can along our corridors and our commercial corridors and things like that. So again, I tend to agree, at least philosophically, that this is just difficult. It makes it hard on everybody. How do you enforce this?
What chances are you gonna call the school and tell them, please pick up your son? But is there gonna be fines for these type of things?
Here's what we typically do, although this kind of amps things up. What we've always done in the past, a lot of times we'll collect signs and then we'll call the businesses and we'll let them know we've got their sign and we give them an opportunity to come and get that. And then we'll say, hey, by the way, this is illegal. Please don't put it out here. You can put it on your property. You know, we explain the rules to them. We usually try to be good neighbors, for lack of a better description, kind of educate them and let them do that kind of thing.
Right.
But this is going to make it almost impossible, just because, not that we can't do that, you make a choice. Either you get just a handful of them and you try to keep that kind of consistent policy of doing that, or you recognize you're just going to get overrun. So, yeah, we don't know, to be honest, as to how we're going to address this.
Well, and I will say that, just driving around town today, knowing this was going to be on our agenda, I counted how many signs would not fit under the Supreme Court ruling based on this
How do you
UDO.
find out about
Well, we have Zach here, and we've got Jamie on staff, and social media, radio, word of mouth. Got to get a crowd here,
I'm sure it's gonna take.
The state be involved in this too?
No, sir, not likely. I'm trying to think of any scenario, other than they could pick up signs along their right-of-way.
Yeah, I know they'll do that.
Right.
Get the feds to come down. Since it's a Supreme Court decision.
Like I said, I tend to agree with Commissioner Reeves. It does seem very restrictive because yet I'm running for office, I can put political signs out for a specific period of time, correct?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But yet somebody that's advertising vacation Bible school or chicken dinner or whatever to raise funds for a church can't do that at all.
Well, just for clarification, they can put it on their property. Now, you can't put it off. Right, yeah. The idea, what we're saying is you can't go to like an intersection and put it there.
I understand.
And be honest with you, you're not supposed to be doing that now if it's in the right of way anyway.
Right.
Because that's technically illegal. But there were certain off-premise signs that we used to allow based on the type of use, like the church signs, for example. But those are no longer, essentially, we have to treat everything exactly the same now. We can only treat it based on bulk standards. So the option is you either allow essentially unregulated, I don't mean in the sense that anybody can put any unlimited number of signs off premise as long as they would get permission from that property owner, assuming they're on private property. And we don't regulate what the content is, we just regulate the bulk of it. Or we take this approach and we say you no longer can have those types of signs. Because our concern is you're going to get a lot of visual clutter and it's not going to be very attractive. But
Point of clarification. I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but if somebody is a member of a church or they have a child at a school and the school's going to have a bake sale or the church is going to have a vacation Bible school, can they put a sign in their yard?
yes, probably, because
Okay.
again, I can't regulate content. So,
Okay.
so this is where it gets sticky.
I'm not trying
I
to.
think you could put a sign on the right of way if you get permission.
Well,
I reckon
you might
this-
can, but I don't know that you can
This
get.
happened about 8 years ago. I remember. The Presbyterian Church, we were driving around in the community, you see we got the signs up. And I called and got permission from the division to put them up, as long as I didn't put them in sight distance and in the areas where they were pulling shoulders and ditches. Now, believe
Like
it or
a
not, someone,
temporary sign. Yeah,
someone
okay.
within the county went and pulled up some of them, but we got them back. But anyway, you can do it if you get permission.
So if you go back to, and I don't want to belabor this point, I just want to try to answer your question fully. So if you go back to 11-14,
Okay.
and if you look at that section, that's really what we're talking about here, what the key to this whole thing is. If I have a single-family dwelling, and I want to put a sign in my front yard, I'm allowed to put one, if you look at that 11-10-2, Okay, as long as you meet those standards, you can put that sign there. I can't regulate what the sign says as long as it's not obscene or, you know,
Right.
something. So if you wanted to put that sign there advertising your church's fish fry or something like that, you can do it. What can't do is the church can't go out there and pop that sign down, you know, unless they get
Right.
permission from the property owner. So by
Right.
default, you can get some of these things, exactly what they're describing. It's just that you can no longer, we don't recognize it through the ordinance as being a church sign or this or
Right.
that.
You just can't go stick it on the side of the road somewhere.
That's right.
It's just more than one way to skin a cat,
Yeah, that's right.
so to speak. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, I got off track. Yeah, thank you, Marshall.
Yeah, that's a kind of a great illustration of how you can kind of get that same, you know, lost dog sign, whoever said that. If you got permission from that property owner and they were allowing you to put that sign out there, you could essentially have a lost dog sign. But it makes it a little more complicated.
All right, so now you've got commercial property, and obviously that's not their property, but they're renting. They ask you for permission, okay again, right? Sign
I'm
off.
trying to follow it.
You got commercial property, the person that's renting doesn't own the property, as long as they get permission, they can put that
From
sign
the
up.
owner.
Temporary sign? Yeah, again, as long as it meets that standard. Now, again, they would be limited to that size. I think there's a limitation of how many you can have, but again, the whole point of this is we can no longer go out there and regulate what the sign says.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Anyone that would like to speak against this text amendment?
Robert Reeves, 827 Primrose.
Okay, did you get that, Mrs. Gamble? Okay.
Steve Malloy, 2615 Bel Air. Not sure I'm against it, but I probably will be. So,
Once you read it.
I was wondering what size a residential real estate sign can be.
If it's in a commercial zone, it goes back to like on a residential property.
Yeah.
You're looking at 6 square feet. Yeah.
All right, I'm not so against it now.
Okay, all right.
Although you did say commercial signs was 30 days. I'd love to have things sell in 30 days.
Yes, now those are temporary signs, right?
Okay.
So 30
But a
days.
for sale, commercial for sale sign,
30 days. They're all treated the same way.
you know that can't happen.
See, this is where you get
Okay,
into the.
I'm against that.
Right, okay. Thank you. Okay, all right, well, we'll close the public hearing on that. And with that, I will say thank you to our planning board for your due diligence and all your hard work, and excuse you to the rest of your evening. Take care. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The only thing.
That's right. Go right there. Take your time.
Flea market.
Okay,
Those people rent.
I guess they all have signed up for the public.
well, that's what I was gonna say, and do we have any staff out there? I guess they know to come on in, yes, because we have plenty of room now for everybody. Yes, sir.
Before you move on, we'd already gone past, I didn't realize this map was here. I would like to discuss this map for a few minutes.
Okay,
And I don't have to do it now, I can do it whenever you're working in.
okay, let's, just because, you know, we've got staff here, if you don't mind, we'll just add it new business at the end, okay. Okay. All right, and we've moved item A, I'm sorry, public comments. We had 3 people for public comments, but they all spoke during the public hearing. Any Okay, all right, I'm just going.
You want to move the signs.
Yes, exactly. Oh, dear. No, that was some meeting that night. Okay, item B on new business, proclamation for National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Ms. Angelina Noel. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. So I'm here before you to call attention to National Child Abuse Prevention Month and ask the board to proclaim the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month here in Lee County. I also wanted to take this opportunity to educate and inform the public that might not be aware that North Carolina has what's called a mandated reporting law, which means that any person or institution by law is required to report any suspected abuse, neglect, or dependency to their local Department of Social Services where the child resides or is found. And that all reports can be made anytime, day or night, by calling your local agency. And that the identity and any information that is contained as far as an investigation goes is considered confidential. So I'm asking the board to call upon the members of the community to do their part to prevent child abuse.
That phone number is on our website, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I'll read the proclamation that we have. Whereas children are vital to Lee County's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, as well as being our most vulnerable assets. And whereas all children deserve to have the safe, stable, nurturing homes and communities they need to foster their healthy growth and development. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future quality of life of a community. And whereas communities that provide parents with the social support, knowledge of parenting and child development, and concrete resources they need to cope with stress and nurture their children, ensure all children grow to their full potential. And whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas any person or institution in our state who has cause to suspect that any juvenile is abused, neglected, or dependent is mandated to make a report to the County Department of Social Services where the child resides or is found. Now therefore be it resolved that the Lee County Board of Commissioners proclaim the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Lee County, North Carolina, and call upon residents to observe this week by helping and supporting families in our community, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. Adopted this day, all right, April 18th, 2018. Any discussion or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, the 16th. I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you very much.
So first, thank you for what you do. And
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proclamation as presented for National Child Abuse Month Prevention and approve.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. All right. Moving on to our next item. Item C, consideration of Lee County Health Insurance Program. Ms. McGee. Hey, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Before you tonight is our health insurance renewal, and the renewal for 2018-19 is going to be about a 13.9% increase renewal. Our original quote was 19.7%, and we worked with our broker, Mr. Crumpton and I, and we got it down to 13.9. So I'm hoping that you will approve this. I'll let you run.
You can run
it.
I told Joyce I'd help her get through this. We
It's
haven't
not
had to
working.
present this type of renewal to the board in quite some time, probably about 5 years.
Have you, have you gotten any feedback from the staff? I mean, are they aware
No.
yet
This
of
is the right clicker.
what, okay.
There we go.
Um,
Have to turn the on button.
Well.
Hey.
Here's one you don't hire, Russell.
If you look at our claims, our renewal formula called for a 17% increase on a fully insured basis. And we had the broker to look at a self-funded plan also, and that called for a 13.5% increase. And there's really not enough difference there for us to go to a self-funded plan. Because the self-funded, as you know, we have to accrue those funds and to pay those bills, and it wasn't really feasible, we don't think, to go to a self-funded plan.
He also took bids from United, Cigna, and Aetna. They were all over 20% increase.
Right. I mean,
for fully insured.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us like to see an increase, but just in talking to other people, you know,
And this
we still have a really good plan for the price.
We do, and this is the first year that in 5 years that we've really had a significant increase.
Yeah.
And we did have a lot of high claims. I mean, that's what drives your cost is your
Right.
claims. And
Right.
we had several high claims this year. Again, those are the companies, Aetna, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, that we went to. And if you look at 2017, 2018, the comparisons to 2019. And it did go up. But the original quote, as I said, was a 19.7% increase. So getting it down was very important to us. So we met several times with the broker, and he went back to Blue Cross and Blue Shield as well as bid out the plans. And so they improved it. It shows about, it did change, but the premiums are going to change, and that's the last slide after this slide. The premiums are going to change, and you'll see there's the differences in the premiums there. And we changed it to where it was even on the county side and the employee side. And that will change effective August 1st, but it'll start changing in the July paychecks.
Okay.
We're also going to recommend to the board that going forward, all new hires after August 1st, the only health insurance plan we're going to offer them is the HSA plan. PPO right now seems to be the choice of adverse selection. It's where all our high claims are. And so if we just had HSA running right now, we wouldn't have this increase. But the PPO is not running very well, so I think there's a couple issues there. When you're in the HSA, you have to pay your own medical bills, so you pay a lot better attention to your cost. And you're shopping more. The employee becomes, or whoever's covered, becomes a consumer and is paying attention to what they're paying. So we're seeing a lot better results in the HSA, and eventually we'll probably end up with HSA completely because we only have 80 covered lives now in the PPO. So more and more people are switching over to it anyway. And going forward, we'll probably eliminate the PPO.
And we're hoping with our health clinic, our wellness clinic, that that's going to make a difference too. We had 33 people in 4 days last week that used the health clinic, so that was good. They stay busy every day, which is good.
But we're recommending that we take the increase. I've heard of a lot higher in a lot of other counties.
Yeah.
And when you consider medical trend is 12%, we didn't beat it for the first time in 5 years. So we're just a little bit above medical trend right now. So
Did having a wellness center help?
we hope going forward it will help us.
I think we had 33 people last week use the wellness center. So,
It's been very interesting since it opened, the number of small business people in the community who are talking about what a good decision that was,
Yes.
that was for the county. And how much they would like to have the same thing in center there, to include the city.
That's good.
Maybe we'll start a trend.
I hope so. But I would like to ask you to approve this and approve the rates for the coming year.
So moved.
Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And thank you all for the good work you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, request to approve renewal of pre-event contract for disaster debris management services between Lee County and Tag Grinding Services. Mr. Joe Terry.
Well, while Joe's coming up, I want to remind you that yesterday was the 7-year anniversary of when we actually had to use this service. So,
And I'm so thankful that we dodged that weather yesterday, because I tell you, some friends in Greensboro are dealing with, they may be calling you for advice, both of you.
Well, basically, we do have a contract that you approved in 2014 with Tag Grinding Services to provide the disaster debris services if needed. And I'm happy to say we haven't needed it since we've done that. And this, according to the terms and the conditions of the contract, we do have one more renewal with that contract, and this is that final renewal. So probably sometime around January, we'll start the process all over again.
Move to approve.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
I got one. Do you know if they're involved in any, I noticed before coming into the meeting, they were talking about Hurricane Matthew and the unspent money. Do you know if these folks have been involved in any of the cleanup?
I do not know if they specifically were with that
I'd
storm.
be interested in knowing if you check with them and just.
Sure, I can do that.
Because they're talking about the fact that the money is here, but there's been no movement in those areas that were hit very hard, like Robertson County, for example, and Cumberland County.
Yeah. The emergency management folks are hanging on to it supposedly so they can make sure everything's in compliance, but I think most of it's HUD funding, for homes. And I know in talking to some of the commissioners there, they still have several hundred people in hotels, and this is 18 months, which is, I'm sorry, we digress.
No problem.
Question two, now this will expire at the end of this year, right?
Mhm.
What do we do if we have another emergency situation? Do we have to go out and take bids again?
Well, this will expire actually June 16th of 2019.
Okay.
This is
So
for,
we'll- so we'll-
right, this-
In
right.
any case, if we'd have an emergency, we'd have to go out and re-advertise, or how would we handle it?
we would do another
If we
pre-event
had a
contract
true emergency.
before this expires.
Right,
So
we'll
we'll
issue
do an
another
RFP.
RFP for the period after this, probably around January, we'll start that process.
I just wondered if we had the
Yeah.
ability to maybe, in case of a real emergency, to extend the contract if we wanted to, or whatever.
We'll be covered.
We can't
should
extend
be.
this current contract, we'll have to have a new one
Yeah.
after that date in July, 2019. But we'll
I
be
guess
ready,
what
we'll
I'm
have one in
saying,
place.
We need to have one on contract all the time, or do we?
We will.
Yes, so
Okay.
they'll
We
be
will.
on contract to June, and then we'll actually go out for bids or proposals prior to that contract expanding.
Okay.
Yeah, which will
That's what I'm
start up
wondering.
as soon as
And
this
they
one
may
ends.
be they have the same opportunity as everybody else to rebid at that point.
Sure,
So
yeah.
they could continue.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's enough.
All right, have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, consideration of Lee County's participation in opioid litigation. Mr. Crumpton, Ms. Parrish?
You can have it.
I'll take it away.
All right.
I'm sure all of y'all are aware that there has been much discussion about the opioid epidemic in the country, and North Carolina is not exempt from that discussion. What we there has been a lot of discussion amongst the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners in terms of opioid litigation. There has been currently about 29, I believe it's somewhere around 29 counties who have either hired national law firms to represent the counties or have filed suit in federal court against either the manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and or the distributors. We have provided the information that was on the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners website in terms of some of the averages for Lee County. They have, you can go on the website and find the averages for the whole state as well. Some of those is that the state average for opioid prescriptions per resident in 2016 was 1.06, and the Lee County average was 1.186. And the state average for opioid pills per resident in 2016 was 78.3, and Lee County's was 84.9. We've had a discussion amongst staff in terms of how the opioid epidemic has affected the county. We have been contacted by a couple of law firms, national law firms, who are interested in representing the county. We would have to have further discussions with them in terms of what types of data they're looking for in terms of damages and how it has affected our county. At this point, we're just asking if the board isn't so interested and chooses is to issue a request for information for law firms to then respond to, work with myself and management, and then present to the board, and then the board would make a decision as to if they wanted to file a lawsuit, and if so, with which law firm they would choose. That's how I know the couple of other counties have done it that way. I've been in discussion with Alamance County attorney and have reached out to a couple of others. So, be happy to answer any other questions as well.
What's the time frame on that?
We probably would have this back to you in the second meeting in May, because these folks are ready. The folks who are doing this, they're ready to give us the proposals. So we have met with them, and they're ready to go. Plus, they've done it so many times across the state.
And we might get a few more. As a result.
Yeah, there are a couple more or at least one more I know I've heard of who's trying to get into the state and get into it. But really, there's two major ones that have really got it going right now.
Let me ask because what I think I'm hearing, you're saying some outside firms are making contact?
Yes.
And then we also have local firms who may represent some of the outside firms.
So we would have to file this lawsuit in federal court, and where they are pending currently is called a multi-district litigation. It's called an MDL, and so all of the cases, the way I understand it, all the cases currently are being funneled to Ohio.
Right.
Then once the Ohio, if a settlement happens or if they start to hear a case, that would be the first place that they will hear one of these cases. Either if there's no settlement or if they just start trying all of the cases, then it will be brought back to North Carolina in our federal courts, in our federal court system to be tried here. So what some of the firms have associated local counsel with them. I guess my understanding is, and that would be something I could find out as we move forward and talking with the law firms, is I think they would be sort of the bridgeway between the national firm and then the local firm to kind of help communications.
Like a local contact.
Not everybody's doing that, though.
Right.
Not everybody's doing that, but we do have to have someone associated, I believe, in North Carolina to sign the complaint as well.
Well, I just want to make sure that if we have local folks who are trying to be a part of it and represent some of the out-of-state firms, then I don't want them to miss their opportunity. But in addition to that, I'd like to have more information about how and what type of financial impact initially it may have on the county, if any at all.
Correct. And I don't disagree. If we don't recover, they'll receive return from the proposals we've seen, and this will be something that we'll, when we do the request for information, get more information on and be able to speak with each firm individually, because those would be the exact same questions I have as well. And to make sure that we wouldn't be liable for any claim that even if it is tried and we were to lose, are we going to be subject to have to pay attorney fees? Correct.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are legitimate questions that I don't disagree. I think that we would have to ask with each firm who may be interested.
And I may be mistaken, but I think I saw something on the gentleman from, what was it, Mississippi, was it Roy Moore, the former AG?
That's Alabama.
That's Alabama.
No, gentlemen, there's more than one person named Roy Moore. That's on your mind.
Sorry.
No, this was the former Attorney General down in Mississippi who handled the FICA.
He's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But anyway, my point was going to be, it's sort of set up like, it sounds initially like it might be set up like the tobacco.
Oh, it is. It's all over. Same thing all over again.
And I don't think
We have
county
to be
fair too
careful.
well.
We have
That's
to
why
be
we're trying
very
to.
careful.
That's why we're trying to get out there ahead of it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I would like to know that too, because I'm very familiar with the
That's
tobacco.
right. It was.
A lot of the funds that were collected or were supposed to be used to
Locally.
provide local opportunities or retraining for other careers, and
We have to beg for it now.
Well, I understand that the state attorney general's filing suit too, is that right? In the same situation? What I'm trying to
He's
figure
kinda
out is how
backed
we
off.
would stack up in there.
He's backed off.
He's backed off.
I think he had filed one suit against one.
They're sort of running everything out of the AG in Ohio, I think, is one primary guy.
Right.
We're trying to represent the other one.
Yeah. He's trying to get everybody to consolidate and then do it.
My next question would be, if we win, how would you split up the funds?
That's what we're concerned about.
Yeah.
Well, after the opioid meeting on April 5th, I think it's, pretty much on education and treatment.
Yep.
Is where those funds would go.
Good.
So we'd have to develop a plan for the use of the funds, and that's one of the main reasons that most communities are filing suit, is they want money to, to address the issue. And so, that's a big thing that probably came out of that meeting is, there were a lot of great ideas that came out of it, but how do you move forward with it? And unfortunately, it's going to take funding.
That's right. That's the main thing. I heard some good ideas, but the money trail is what you got to follow.
Well, during my research, I'm pleased to report that Pfizer has not been named a plaintiff, Commissioner Sloan. Glad to see that.
I noticed here that you have several of these counties listed. About half of them have hired a retained counsel, and another good percentage, maybe 10 more, have actually filed lawsuits. Have we talked to any of these?
Yeah. I've spoken with Wright Mini. We actually had a joint county attorney semi-conference in the NCACC, and I've had discussions with multiple county attorneys about this.
Okay.
And it's still talking to more as we.
Good.
But, the ask night, I guess, for the motion is just for Mr. Crumpton and Ms. Parrish to put out the request for information for law firms. Just, basically, how would they proceed and cost, impact us, that kind of thing. And then just to give us more information to decide whether we'll proceed or not. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, what I'm trying to find out is, are you talking about a national RFI, or are you talking about regional or statewide or what?
We would submit it out. We would contact the people who have contacted us, and they are all national law firms. I think one is out of
Mississippi.
Mississippi, and then is Wisconsin the other. And then I received something from someone out of New York. But these national firms are really the ones who are litigating these cases.
Okay, but so the local firm that's contacted us would be invited?
I'm sure they would come with the national firm.
They're
like affiliated.
They have signed on, they are affiliated with that national firm.
Well, but I'm still trying to make sure that I understand that if all the nationals don't have a law firm here, and there may be only one of the nationals that has one, that's the kind of information I'm listening for,
Sure.
if you follow me.
I don't know how they made their decision. That may be something that we could ask.
Some of the national firms have contracted, but there's only one national firm that's contracted with local attorneys.
Okay.
And so the others have chose not to.
I don't want to knock our folks out.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah. By going with a national firm who has no contact down here, we need to have, we got local folks that want to participate. That's the firm I want to deal with.
Yeah, that's who I want to support.
Depending on how well the county fares. I'm just gonna say that.
Oh, I'm with you there, but what I'm saying,
If everything else is equal.
If you got 5 national firms and only one has contact here in Lee County or North Carolina, then I don't know that I'm interested in the other 4.
You might want to listen to their proposals first.
Yeah, they're.
I didn't say I was going deaf.
No, I know.
Like
I
Commissioner
understand.
Reeves, though, if it doesn't involve our local, I'm not interested in it either.
One might charge us 25%.
Yeah, they all gonna charge the same.
35.
I think they will all eventually associate with someone in North Carolina because I think they'll about have to in order to be able to practice in.
Well, that'd be a bit of information we'd like to have. Have you already done that?
Right.
Right. 25 or 35.
Right. And that's what we're asking for a motion
So I
to
move
ask
that
for
we
that.
direct staff to continue to gather more information about the opioid epidemic and its effects on our county, to send a request for proposal information in reference to litigation that's occurring.
Okay, any more questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, and probably within the month, we should have those. Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, Mr. Reeves, the map?
I was going to also,
Oh, I'm so sorry, yes. Okay, can somebody make a motion to approve adding Mr. Reeves' item to the new business item E?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk, for keeping us right.
Point, I'll hold.
I tell you, I asked our GIS director to put this map together based on this article that
Is it upside there?
Well, see where the title of it is?
Sure.
There you go, just for the viewing audience. There you go, thank you. Just, oh my gosh.
this is the
Comedian in the group, but no.
I'm gonna say that. This article was on CBS 17, and I read it and noted that in the article it indicates in a 2,000-foot radius around the school site, there have been dozens of arrests, 4 reported shootings, 19 assaults in the past year. Well, I was curious to what 2,000 feet would look like as it relates to what the claim is, how bad the community is. Well, if you look on here and see,
Takes up half a Sanford, doesn't it?
it takes up a considerable number of good businesses to include this government building here. And so my only point, and I think each of you, whether you want one or not, I think you ought to get a copy of it just to have for reference purposes. But you know, here's something that has always bothered me. People that lay claim to wanting to do something good for Lee County, you go out and bash, you stand right here and bash this county. With no regard to who might be getting bashed for whatever your purpose is, but you look at some of the businesses in here, Sanford Family Care Services, Sanford JC's over Park Avenue Family Park. Read some there, Commissioner.
Southern Carpet and Interiors, Trinity Lutheran Church.
Yeah. Oh, yes, the Dairy Bar.
Dairy Bar, that's right. Pinehurst Medical Center.
This is the point. This is the school, we're this green section right here. That's the school site.
Yeah.
So when we have people come before us and make disparaging remarks about a community, they ought to be held responsible for what they say and accountable for what they say, because this truly suggests that this is a very large area and takes in a lot of good businesses and people and their homes.
It's a great community.
It is. Very good. So I just want to take a minute and suggest to you, Don will get you one as quickly as you requested, but it's a good map to have.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for your time.
It's good information.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any comments or questions on the map or? Okay. Yep. Yep, you're right. That's, I will say, in hearing that several times, 2,000 feet is a long way. And it is a great community, 2,000 feet around that school site. And good project. Okay, County Manager's report.
Yes, ma'am. Start with the Colon Road Water Project. On April 4th, we held a community meeting here at the Gordon Wicker Room and met many residents to get signatures on easement agreements and also access agreements so that we could get on their property to run the water lines. So we're expecting construction to start next week on the lines that are actually going to the homes, and we're targeting the completion date of around the middle of June. So we are moving along with that. The courthouse renovations, Mosley Architects is about finished with their preliminary report, so we're going to schedule them at one of our May meetings to deliver that to this board, and then we'll follow up with the courthouse folks to meet with them probably individually by department. Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we met with Withers and Ravenel last week and went over preliminary plans for Kiwanis Children's Park, O.T. Sloan, Horton, and Temple Parks. And I thought they looked excellent. We are planning to have as part of the May Parks and Recreation Board meeting, I think that's on Tuesday, May 26th, something like that. We're going to have a public meeting where they can come into the into the Gordon Wicker Room, and we have too many buildings named Wicker now, I believe, or rooms or whatever. It's tough. Where the citizens can go in and take a look at the plans and offer comment to staff and to the designers. Speaking of the Wicker School, we are scheduled for the bond sale this Wednesday, scheduled to close on the purchase of the Wicker School on April 25th. In your packet it says April 24th, and then the closing on the bonds will occur on May 9th. The attorneys asked for an extra week to close everything out, and we've been working diligently on a survey of the site and combining all 9 parcels into one parcel, which is a requirement of this whole project. So Hopefully around May 9th, we'll be finished with our part, and then the schools can begin their part, and which is building the school. Moving along in the 18-19 budget process, I've reviewed all the internal budget requests. I've started reviews of the outside agencies, including the community college and Saga and some other nonprofits. I have in the report, have not received the Lee County Board of Education's request. That's not true. I've also not received the City of Sanford's request. So, we're expecting hopefully the city's request any day. The Board of Education has until May 15th. And I forgot to say, back under the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, when we met out at the Kiwanis Children's Park, the J.C. Hutt property, which the city owns, came up in discussion. I went ahead and talked with the city manager about them deeding that parcel over to us so that it would make it a clean, ownership, and they're voting on that tomorrow night. So I appreciate the city doing that for us. So upcoming, we'll be talking with the superintendent probably at the May 12th meeting, not only about their budget, but also charter schools. The board had asked for a discussion of charter schools and the impact it would have on their budget. But as you heard tonight, it's kind of difficult because not everybody that will go to this charter school will be from Lee County. So actually, they'll draw money from other counties. If someone's driving up from Spring Lake to go to that school, that money would come from Cumberland County. And if they came from Harnett, it would come from Harnett. So it's very difficult to guess, but the superintendent has agreed to do that. The parking lot paving. I don't know if you've seen, but the parking lot, the lower parking lot has been churned up pretty well. It probably was not what we were expecting to find underneath it. So there's a contingency involved in the project. I'm going to let you know we probably will be spending part of that contingency on helping with the subgrade and rock. There's not a lot of rock under. They didn't use a lot of rock underneath that asphalt dock, and it doesn't look too good.
That was probably back when they had the quarry.
So there were some concerns when the asphalt came up. So since they're here this week, we'll have to make that call with them this week on what we need to do to make sure we get it repaved. And thank the staff and the businesses around us who for this week will have to suffer and park in the upper parking lot and points north all the way up to mental health and beyond. And we are running a van through the parking lot at the heavy times in the morning and the afternoon to help folks get to the building. So we're also monitoring the guest spots out here to make sure they're indeed being used by guests who come into the building. So hopefully able to finish this weekend with the paving, and we can get back to normal next Monday. That's my report, Madam Chair.
John, let me ask you about this CCCC and the Board of Education, Sheriff, and Department of Social Service. They'll be at our May 14th budget.
They'll either be there or we had talked about starting one or two of the May meetings early, and we're trying to schedule that right now to if they can come at 5 o'clock and discuss their department. Angelina Noel will probably be one of those that come to a regular scheduled meeting.
Madam Chair, I've got an opioid question.
Sure.
I noticed that we were above the state percentage for the, what do you call those things?
Pills per house, prescriptions per house.
Prescription.
Yeah, prescription.
Right.
Did you all break those down to determine how many were written locally and how many came from other places? The reason, you understand why I'm asking. If I live in Lee and I go down to Harnett, that prescription would count against.
Yeah, well, we had that concern because I think we have a lot of military that come in, and maybe
Yeah.
get prescriptions from the VA or elsewhere.
So I guess I'm trying to understand how we get a true read.
What's being prescribed here?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yeah, it was DHHS is the one who issued this report, but I'm sure I can contact someone who put it together and ask them those questions. How they
Well, it seems relevant to me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's really going on in Lee County. People coming through, some of those folks are obviously in business for themselves. They're gonna go wherever they can get one filled. But to just simply say we're at 89% versus the state at 78 is somewhat unfair to Lee County if we don't know exactly where they're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, reach out.
I think another point that needs to be made, in addition to what Commissioner Reese is saying, is that these drug companies, it's what they're telling doctors that they will not, get addicted, and falsely giving that information out. And that's a lot of what this is about. I mean, that's a good question about the prescription per household and all that, but it's about a big drug manufacturer telling doctors that their patients will not become addicted, and they are. And it's using our resources, our law enforcement, jails,
Sure.
emergency room, and they need to be held accountable. That's just all I'm saying.
Right.
All right, Commissioner's comment? Commissioner Dodson?
Once and all, just real good discussion on this end, on the public end, other than that.
Hope everybody was safe after everything came through last night. Other than that, thank you.
I'm ready to go watch Brent McCown again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll hurry. Doc?
Well, I don't think I have anything I want to discuss. I'm okay.
Well, I wanted
Or
to
shock to you.
tell Lisa I'm glad she's back and I hope
Yeah.
you're doing fine.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Good to see her.
And then I had a phone call about the Northview Optimus Park, and do we have a contract with them to provide maintenance, or did we cancel it, or
We did not renew it, yes, sir.
so could we discuss that at some point?
Yeah, we talked about it. Well, I know I talked to John about it. Maybe we didn't.
It's not a public facility,
Okay.
okay? We
But we were
originally got into that contract against staff's advice. So we were supposed to be using those fields. When Tramway Ball Field was built, we quit using those fields. So we do not have a public purpose for working on those fields.
No,
I have explained that to the Optimist Park folks, Northview folks. We don't have an ownership in that.
understood. I just wanted to ask.
It's
Good question.
It's a very good question. I'm surprised it hadn't come up yet already.
Well, I meant to ask you before the meeting. I apologize. I sidetracked myself.
I think I know why the county owns or runs the recreation department. If you're around my age, I can remember when the city of Sanford ran it. County residents weren't allowed to participate.
That's true.
We didn't pay city taxes.
That's right. That's right.
See, you made a difference already.
And then I wanted to, commend the community for the participation in the opioid meeting at the McSwain Center. I heard somebody say there was 150 people. I probably think there might have been 115, 120, but it's still.
I thought it says 107.
There was one individual there, regardless of how many was there was one individual there that, was, had been an individual with a problem and,
Recovery.
probably is in recovery and fighting it every day,
Yeah.
but, he got up and spoke for his table, and I commend him for what he's doing. And the one thing that I realized in in that, and I kind of already knew it, but recovery is different for everybody and for every situation, and your definition of what is working and what recovery is different for everybody. So, it is a problem. So I wanted to thank the community and the individuals that participate and realize that we got a hard battle ahead of us. I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, welcome back, Lisa. You had us all worried there.
Sorry about that.
John, mostly.
I will tell you, I had myself worried after this one.
We're glad you're back.
Thank you.
Quick run through is that, like everyone else has said, I was so proud of our community at the Opioid Forum. I know our facilitator, coming from the association in Raleigh, said she had been at a number of those events, and we had the largest attendance by far. She couldn't believe it, and I said, that's why we live in Lee County. It's a great place to be, and people care. So that was definitely demonstrated at that meeting. A couple of quick things. Shout out, kudos to Sanford for the Street Fest on Saturday. I know we were talking before the meeting. It was a great event. I saw everybody from 1-year-olds to 85-year-olds through the day just having a blast, and we couldn't have been blessed with better weather. So just a super
And the
event.
Salvation Army had 170 participants in the 5K run as well.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, because I wasn't sure about the number. But just a fantastic event, and remind everybody that we have another one coming up this coming Saturday down in Broadway for Broadway Our Way. Starts at 10 with the barbecue cook-off, and there'll be food and fun and music, a lot of the same type of activities. So bring your family and friends for that. Some of you up here at this desk probably are aware of the situation with the tariffs between the U.S. and China. And one of the things that you may not be aware of is that about a week ago, China suspended all tobacco contracts for U.S. tobacco farmers, which hit really hard because it wasn't just direct contracts, it was contracts with middle companies like BTI, Universal, Allied, those kinds of things. Where there's a lot of negotiations in North Carolina with our Commissioner of Agriculture, and also in Washington. The latest news today was we think that they're going to be reinstated, but we don't have anything in writing yet. But, for our county, that's a big cash crop for Lee County. And there's also concern for poultry and soybeans, also big crops for Lee County, as well as the hog industry. And that'll be a huge hit for the state of North Carolina. So just pay attention to that, because that's going to affect our bottom line if we see some significant cuts from China moving into the growing season. And along with that, I will be going Wednesday to the State Association board meeting, and I'm on there as ag chair. So just if you think of anything you want me to bring to the board meeting on Wednesday, please call me or email me. I'll be happy to. We've got kind of a light agenda, so there's going to be a lot of open discussion, which we're looking forward to. So I'll be at that in Durham on Wednesday. And then just reminding everybody that on April 25th is the association district meeting. It's being held in Chatham County at 5:30. If you would like to attend that, I don't know how many have said they were going, but if you'll let Jennifer know, I was talking to the folks in Raleigh today, and they said if you'd like to attend, just let them know as soon as possible. And two more things really quickly. I went with the manager to the LGC meeting and learned a bunch. That was a fascinating meeting, and we got good news there. I'm sure you all heard that our bond package was approved, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yes, ma'am.
And had really good comments from the board members there. They were excited, and a couple of them said to let them know when we were getting ready to open the school and the parks were done and the courthouse, and they tried to make as many ribbon cuttings as they could. So that was good to share with those folks and see that go on. And last but not least, for sure, is just losing another community member since or leader since our last meeting, Miss Sylvia Churchwell. She did so much for agriculture in our community, as well as, gosh, just if anybody needed anything, you could call Sylvia and she'd just be right there for folks. So certainly extend our sympathy to her family and enjoy her memories. So, motion for adjournment?
I'll offer that motion, but I want to also ask, we moved item A up to consent.
Yes.
We didn't read the resolution or.
Well, we found out by the family that that's sort of a surprise event.
Okay.
Mhm.
I was gonna ask, could you add a signature block for other commissioners that might want to sign it?
Sure.
I would like to sign it for one.
Okay, sure. We'll have a copy at the office tomorrow. We can work that out. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm still ready to go.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Y'all have a safe travel.